viral this week, we talk about a natural disaster such as embattled and former EPA Director Scott Pruitt as an all-new file starts right now.
Hello everyone, welcome to another edition of Viral. I'm your host as always, Kendrick Diggs, here once again. Got a brand new episode of Viral. So you want to join in the conversation, use the hashtag Viral for everything. You want to make comments, questions, or concerns about this episode, where we talk about the embattled head of the EPA, or the departed head of the EPA, Mr. Scott Pruitt. So join in the conversation. Use Viral. Well, many of you may know Scott Pruitt is. Many of you may not know who Scott Pruitt is. But he was one of the lead advocates against the EPA prior to becoming the head of the EPA as its director. And becoming his director all for Trump, because Trump liked him. And now he's out of a job and stuff. So we're going to pinpoint how did Scott Pruitt rise to power to the EPA and how his down the power came all about. All right, then you want to know who is Scott Pruitt and why is the media so fixated with this man on doing things out of the ordinary, doing business practices. They even say he's even creating corruption in the EPA. Well, let's take a look back on who Scott Pruitt is to the media. Take a look.
Embattled EPA Chief Scott Pruitt has resigned. President Trump tweeting just moments ago, "I have accepted the resignation of Scott Pruitt as the administrator of the Environmental Protection Agency. Within the agency, Scott has done an outstanding job, and I will always be thankful to him for this." The Senate confirmed Deputy at EPA Andrew Wheeler. He will on Monday assume duties as the acting administrator of the EPA. I have no doubt that Andy will continue on with our agenda and lasting EPA agenda. We have made tremendous progress, and the future of the EPA is very bright. Pruitt facing a long growing list of scandals, starting in part after a March report by ABC News about a sweetheart real estate deal he had with the way he was living in Washington, D.C., basically a $50 a night room in a very expensive, pricey townhouse there in Washington. I want to bring in our chief Washington White House correspondent, Jonathan Karl. And Jonathan, since that report aired, the spotlight grew on Scott Pruitt, and it was very hard for him to get out some of these scandals.
Oh, unbelievable spotlight. I have never seen a cabinet secretary more embattled than Scott Pruitt. By our count, there were more than a dozen separate investigations into various activities of Scott Pruitt as the EPA administrator. And check this out, Tom. 170 members of Congress, including many Republicans, have already called for Pruitt's resignation. So it began very early on with that story broken here on ABC News about that sweetheart deal for the $50 a night room on Capitol Hill. By the way, $50 a night. He only paid the nights that he was in town, but maintained the room the entire time. He also spent more than $40,000 shortly after he became EPA administrator to install a soundproof phone booth in his office. But he went. I mean, these scandals went down the line. But what was very interesting is President Trump stood by him, and in fact, Pruitt was at the White House for the 4th of July celebration just yesterday, seeing all smiles with members of the cabinet. He has released his resignation letter. In that resignation letter, Tom, he says that the attacks on him and on his family simply became too much. Also, I mean, clearly massive pressure from Congress to see Scott Pruitt go.
And John, on that point of the president defending him, Scott Pruitt was the former Attorney General of Oklahoma. He was not new to politics. And yet some of the president's biggest defenders said, you need to get Scott Pruitt out. He's part of the swamp.
Yeah, I mean, so much of this was about conflict of interest, was about using his position for his own personal benefit. You had, a situation where he was using staff at the EPA to help him secure restaurant reservations. He was repeatedly traveling first class. There were a whole bunch of controversies that seemed to be Pruitt using his position, using his influence, using the privilege of higher office to benefit himself. That was the definition of, for many, of the swamp that Trump said he was going to drain.
Scott Pruitt, first things first. You know, this man, before joining the EPA, he was against it. He felt like the environment was okay as is, with dirt, toxins, filth, you name it. He believed that everybody, it was okay. The environment should not be regulated, it should not be clean. You know, sometimes we as people have to take advantage of recycling, as you see right here. Recycling, you know, putting stuff in the trash can, because that trash must get deposited, because we don't want to build in bacteria. And so when you build in bacteria, it leaves an opening for you to kind of like create your own filth, create your own mess. Not like they say now these days where everybody knows one household name, and that's garbage. All right, Pruitt made a name by himself by wanting the EPA shut down for good. So he didn't want the EPA to exist. He fought so hard as state attorney general for Oklahoma to go against the EPA. Well, was this a big sign in the beginning? Could have been, if he was left gone or left out to the pastures. Well, even Nancy Pelosi tweeted this. Hey, you can tell she don't like him either. She hates his guts. And she said, one down, more to go. Who's next? Then the big man, believe me, you know, you follow me on the Pro Wrestling Show. The McMahon family is synonymous with wrestling. So, then the McMahon ain't going nowhere. She stayed put where she at as the head of the small business organization, because she knows about business. Look at the WWE. So, but let's get to a backstory. Pruitt was born in Kentucky. He's 50 years old. He don't even look 50. He looks like he's 65 or something. Moved to Oklahoma, where he ran for state senator and won, and ran for attorney general and became the attorney general, the top lawman in the state. And this is when he started his crusade of going against the EPA, making sure the EPA was cracked down and shut down forever. Now, I'm an advocate for environmental stuff like water, gas, liquor, and stuff, and I hope you all are, because you have to use those resources in order to make utilities and stuff. You know, living out your life. You got to clean yourself. You got to drive yourself to work. That's kind of like into the EPA, the carbon monoxides and stuff like that. So that kind of plays a role into the ecosystem in society and in the world to have cleaner air and cleaner pollution. So Pruitt wanted the EPA to reverse its decision of leaving the environment dirty, filthy, and nasty. Now, most of the times, people like to have their own filth in their own little room, and that's their business. But when it comes to the environment, when it comes to oceans, when it comes to the rainforest, when it comes to the land, when it comes to deserts, we have to keep it clean, because that is a safe for safe keeps. Because we have to clean the environment, keep the environment upkeep. So could we see a world where, see the Dove commercials where the little ducks be covered with black food oil, and you got that Dove, the dish detergent, dishwasher, and you clean it, and then the little duck turns clean. It's clean from that filth, that dirt, and the destruction. Look like Pruitt wanted to do that. Remember this. Remember that from the Gulf Coast, where the holes were leaking and the water underneath was filled with black crude oil, and that was on the Gulf Coast, where the pipes were going up proportion, and the seawater killed all the sea animals like crabs, shrimp, turtles, stuff like covering that oil and stuff like that. So Pruitt was one of those people who believed in that. President Trump enlisted him and tapped him as the head of the EPA, and the people were outraged. Watch this.
Why today? We do know that the president made this announcement by Twitter, but be clear, his EPA, the president's EPA administrator, Scott Pruitt, has been embattled for months. He is the focus of at least 15 separate ethics investigations, ranging from his use of first-class travel to a 24/7 security detail. We tallied this up within the last several days, spending about $4 million in taxpayer money on a variety of different things that many people on both sides of the aisle viewed as suspect. Here is that tweet, a pair of tweets, in fact, from President Trump coming out within the last few minutes. I will read them to you. He writes, "I have accepted the resignation of Scott Pruitt as the administrator of the Environmental Protection Agency. Within the agency, Scott has done an outstanding job, and I will always be thankful to him for this." The Senate confirmed Deputy at EPA Andrew Wheeler will on Monday assume duties as the acting administrator of the EPA. I have no doubt that Andy will continue on with our great and lasting EPA agenda. We have made tremendous progress, and the future of the EPA is very bright. Again, this is a significant announcement just coming from President Trump. I've spoken to advisors about the situation regarding Pruitt for the last several months, and frankly, they told me that he had very few backers within the West Wing, but he had a significant one. That was President Trump. The president, Kate, even within the last month, praising Pruitt for the job he had done, as the president described it, within the walls of the EPA. But as we heard from one of the president's top aides just yesterday, they found new allegations against him, new reports that, frankly, that one of his aides spent money, basically spent personal money, to fund a hotel for Pruitt's family during the transition before they were paid back in cash. That has just come out. Another allegation that just added to the black eye they had already been facing in this situation. An aide telling me that was viewed as another concern. In their words, it was troublesome. But again, the headline right now, Kate, is that Scott Pruitt now out at the EPA.
Yep. People are outraged to the point that Pruitt tried to make a statement that, hey, if I was against the EPA, imagine what I do with the EPA. President Trump welcomed a man who fought hard and against the EPA for so long and brings him into run the place. You know what I'm saying? What's up with that? What's up with that? That's right. Pruitt becomes the EPA director in 2017 and tries to implement stuff that for his own agenda that he wanted to bring in the first place. Fast forward to now, a lady with a child confronts Pruitt and a colleague at a restaurant nearby Washington, D.C., and she tells him how she feels about him running the EPA and his practices. Take a look.
It has certainly been a tough environment these days for Pruitt. Watch what happens when a mom confronts him at a restaurant here in D.C.
Hi. I just wanted to urge you to resign because of what you're doing to the environment in our country. This is my son. He loves animals. He loves clean air. He loves clean water. We deserve to have somebody at the EPA who actually does protect our environment, somebody who believes in climate change and takes it seriously for the benefit of all of us, including our children. So I would urge you to resign before your scandals push you out.
Well, that video comes from Kristen Mink. She's a local teacher who says Pruitt had no response and left right after that moment you just watched. And this morning, as we wade into Swamp Watch, we're learning new details about some of those scandals that have led to calls for Pruitt to resign. The Washington Post, for example, has this new reporting on closed-door House Oversight Committee interviews about some of Pruitt's more controversial spending and management practices. Remember, there are at least 15 ongoing investigations looking into Scott Pruitt.
You tell me she did not hold back one word. She wanted her words to speak loud and clearly when she dogged Pruitt. And Pruitt just sitting there, standing there, taking the abuse, taking them the mess. He just felt like, I can't handle this heat. Now, here's how the media broke the story of how Pruitt had enough. He had enough, and he resigned from his post. Let's take a look. After years of going against the EPA for so many years, finally, Pruitt couldn't handle the pressure of running the place, so He wrote President Trump a letter right here, thanking the president for his kind gesture. And he said, I've been attacked for so long, I can't take the heat. But when you can't take the heat, you can't stay out the kitchen. We get that. Well, Pruitt made sure he left corruption. The EPA kind of saw through that. They said, no, we don't need you. That's what most of the time they say. You never know when your next job might be. You could be so content right now, what you're doing now, that next day you could be gone, instantly be replaced. Just how Pruitt was. So keep in mind on that you can be replaced at any given moment, at any given time. All right. Knowing Trump probably told his people, go and find another person to fill in this spot. But Pruitt, on the hand, what's next for him? Is there a next time? Or is he kind of did what he did to, right the wrongs? Or did the EPA right the wrongs out of him? Well, we'll never find it. We'll never figure it out. I've been Kenny Jinx with your Vow, the Miseducation of Scott Pruitt. So long.